Welcome to Being the Genuine Athlete podcast, where we inspire those who aim for excellence in life and want to understand the how and what it takes to be a champion in life. My name is Jure Koschak. My purpose, dedication, and commitment is to activate your potential, that you understand the ego through your sport and life situations. So I share and give you the tools to be just this, the genuine athlete. Are you ready to tune in? Hello, dear viewers, listeners of Being the Genuine Athlete podcast. Today I have with us lovely lady Dannie De Novo. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
We are great today.
Good.
Nice for having you. I'm going to read something from your page because I think this describes you in a way. I think that you put a lot of effort into this in a way.
Okay.
Not just writing it, but it describes your life. That's what I meant.
Okay,
You
good.
understood correctly. So Dannie is a happiness coach. See, she's an international best-selling author. She was battling depression and anxiety for most of her early life. So she set out on a course to learn what true happiness was for her and for the sake of her baby girl. We'll hear about that story. So now Dannie regularly appears on ABC, Fox, NBC, and other news networks and talk shows as an expert on creating happiness, combating loneliness, depression, and managing anxiety. I think we already put the intention into this episode. You want to add something to that description of you?
No, I'm an attorney and a mom. But yeah, wear lots of hats, and I'm excited to talk about whatever you want to get into today. So
Cool, great. So first, I also want to thank to Podmatch that connected us.
Yeah.
That's a great platform. That it's not a
is.
commercial or anything. We're not paid for this.
Right.
It's like podcast Tinder in a way.
Yeah, right.
But more
Right.
advanced version, so that
Thank goodness.
so that we don't just benefit us. We give pleasure also to others. The mental one.
You're right.
So I know that you want to talk a lot about being happy, staying happy. Why do we need to use so many different hacks, and why happiness is always like evading or elusive? It's running away, and we, in a way, are like hamsters running on that hamster wheel, catching that carrot. I always say to my clients that I work with, just stop, turn around on that hamster wheel, and the carrot will hit you.
There you go.
So
I like that.
Do you want to add something to that regarding happiness?
Yeah, I think people think that happiness is hard, but it's like being an athlete. When you work at it every day and you train yourself to be in that mindset, it becomes, a practice. It becomes part of your identity. It becomes part of who you are. And it's less hard to attain your goal because you're doing it in little increments, right?
Yeah. So you are referring also to certain energy flow, maybe, that this happiness as a consequence can then that we can benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see happiness less of a consequence and more of just a way of being, right? It's just kind of how you go about life. It's sort of your attitude about life. And, I liken it to going to the gym, because if you want a certain physique or you want a certain level of performance, then you have to work at it every single day in some way, shape, or form. And I think the same is true about your happiness. You have to work at it a little bit every day. It's not something that just shows up. It's not something that once you have it, it stays, right? You're definitely entitled to your happiness, but to get to it, you've got to work for it, just like you would in the gym or in any other endeavor.
Yeah. So please go more into this, because you've had a lot of experience. I have had as well, in some way, with clients and with people and with our own life, each of us, of course, because this being happy is sometimes so far away or so unimaginable, not even in the radar of us breathing happy, because there's so many situations inside and outside that we have accumulated with our behavior and our being. How can someone, an athlete for example, that they work hard, they work their butts off, and the less they win, the more they train, the more aggravated and also injured or vulnerable they become.
Yeah.
And being happy for a lot of athletes is a hidden taboo theme, because you cannot show, that you're always happy, or if you're happy, someone might use it. So
Yeah.
maybe dive into this a bit, how you had your own experience, and with others, maybe share a bit of your story regarding this, really having the unhappy, the heavy feeling, and then gradually building up towards that right momentum and feeling.
Yeah. Well, I definitely get the heavy feeling, right? Because, I'm the happiness expert now, but it wasn't that long ago that I was the unhappiness expert. And I was really stuck in some terrible cyclic thinking when I was younger. When I was 19 years old, I had to drop out of college because I was suicidal and I couldn't function in daily life. That's how bad it was. So I get the whole idea of, there's some days just not even being able to get out of bed or off your floor to even brush your teeth, right? That's just asking too much. So for the people who, the people who are out there saying, just smile or try this or try that, on a day like that, that wasn't going to cut it for me. And I get it. I think when you're that far off, when you're just really kind of wishing that your life would come to an end because you're that unhappy, you have to really start small, and you have to allow yourself to gain a little bit of confidence in your happiness, just like you would if you were training in a sport or something along those lines. So on the darkest days that I had, when I decided that, I kind of came to this decision where I wasn't going to end my life, but I wasn't going to live the way that I was living either. I had been in and out of the psychiatric ward, and I didn't want to live that life. I had gone through electroshock therapy treatments, and they were just destroying my body. My memory was gone. I couldn't remember my childhood, and I wanted off that hamster wheel, right? So I made it a decision that I was going to do what I needed to do to kind of get out of this. And so I made a deal with myself, and I hung a calendar on the wall, and I said, for the next 30 days, no matter what, I'm going to go outside every single day, and for 10 minutes even, right? I didn't care if it was sleeting, snowing, pouring down rain, torrential downpour, whatever. I was going outside, and I made a commitment to myself that that's what I was going to do. And I would just go outside, and I would get a little bit of natural light, and I would get some fresh air, and I would start to cross off the days when I came back in. And what's funny about it is it doesn't sound like much, but for somebody who was in that place at that time, seeing all those X's in a row gave me something, right? It gave me a little bit of hope. It gave me a little bit of confidence. It showed me that even at this darkest hour, I could still accomplish something for myself. And so at the end of those 30 days, I added on a little bit more, and I added on a little bit more, and I just took it one step at a time. Now, that's not something that people want to hear, because we just want happiness to show up automatically, right? We want it to be easy. And I think it is easy, but it's also something that it's simple, let's put it that way, but not necessarily easy, because it requires a lot of conscious effort, right? Happiness is not something that you can do while you're on autopilot, while you're worried about other things going on in the background, where you're trying to multitask in different areas of your life. If you really want to be happy, then you've got to make happiness a focus, just like you would anything else that's important to you. And as far as showing it, I think when it comes, you don't have to worry about showing it, right? Because I don't see happiness as being, it's not this elevated state where you're skipping around and you're whistling and you're high-fiving everybody, right? Like, that's not happiness. That's kind of something different. Happiness is just sort of this state of being where you feel content, you feel calm, you feel at peace, you feel connected, you feel like you're in your own skin. It's just a very accepting energy. And so that when those highs come in, yeah, they're great, and you can ride them out for a little bit, but then you come back down to, this baseline. Okay, everything is good. And the same thing happens when the bad comes in, right? It doesn't bottom you out. You feel the emotion, you process it, but then you come back up to here. And, something as an athlete is very valuable to you, because obviously if you're training or you're competing, those things are going to happen very quickly for you, right? And you've got to be able to level it back out and come back to baseline and remember, who you are and why you're there. And that this isn't really life. This is life, right? Right in the middle.
Yeah. Wow. I suggest that viewers and listeners listen to this once more, your response, your answer, because there's so many hidden gems inside. And basically what I've come to terms with and what I've learned and experienced in my life, not just mentally, but also emotionally, physically, on all levels, is right what you're saying. And we can put in a couple of sentences, simple ones, describing this feeling. It's not euphoria. It's
Right.
not jumping around.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, but it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
you need to be all the time on this 100.
Who can be that way all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this, what you can, how you can accumulate and condition, not condition yourself, how much, what's the level that you can cope with and understand and elevate yourself with. And this is where I see a lot of hiding blind spots that you mentioned, that people live and they expect to be happy and that they should be happy while, you know, achieving a lot of things, either material or academically wise or family wise, but there's a blind spot.
Yeah.
Trauma, situations, childhood, all these memories. And the more blind spots you have, the more I always say like this, devil and the angel, sort of the devil has the upper hand on you if you don't know your blind spots. If you have this sensory motor amnesia that you're not aware of, you don't know. And then on top of it, you built more of this kind of understanding and imagination that you are completely down, but you fall into this fantasy world where you create and construct sort of very blindfolding happiness that you always get to be unhappy. It's evading even more. Please tell us about your story, how, you know, your kids told you, your daughter told you, just like mommy. Because I think there's hidden something, another gem, what I mentioned now, and how you can elevate it.
Right. So, you know, I got out of the psychiatric ward by pretending that I was happy because nothing that they were doing was working and I didn't want to be there anymore. So I just started pretending to be happy to the point where they bought it and I moved on with my life. And then I just kept faking being happy because that's what everybody wanted from me, right? Everybody around me didn't want to hear about the fact that I was struggling with depression. They just wanted me to show up and play my part in their life. So I faked it to the point of kind of believing it myself. I graduated from college. I went to law school. I graduated there, pass a bar exam. I get a job, right? And I have a good job and I get a house and I get married and, you know, life is going on. I'm functioning every day. I'm paying the bills, going to work. You know, I go to the grocery store and all the stuff you're supposed to do, but I wasn't living a very fulfilled life. And I think on some level I knew it, but I didn't realize to what extent until I had my daughter. And she came along and changed everything, right? Which every child does. But I really liked being a mom. I did. And that was kind of where I put all of my energy into it. And then one day she was about a year old. I'm making dinner and I'm stirring a pot on the stove kind of mindlessly. And she's on the floor and she's got her little play bowls and spoons that she's, you know, having fun with, watching mom. And at one point she picked up the bowl and spoon and she looked up at me and she started stirring in her little bowl like I was stirring on the stove. And the way she was looking at me was kind of like, look, I'm just like mommy. And, you know, she was my first kid and I'd never seen anything like that before. I was so proud. So I bent over and I said, yeah, just like mommy. And then I almost fainted on top of her. I thought I was going to throw up all over the kitchen floor because at that moment I realized that she was copying me. She was doing everything like mommy. And it didn't matter what I was going to say to her growing up. She was going to be watching me. And I was teaching her how to live a very unfulfilled and lonely and depressed life. So I was sitting there next to her on the kitchen floor. And I made the promise right then and there that I was going to learn everything there was about being happy. I didn't care what it took because I was going to teach her how to be happy. I didn't think I could be happy. I didn't think I was wired for it. I just didn't think I was that kind of person and that there was nothing that could be done, but I was not going to let her go through the same things that I had gone through and started studying everything related to happiness, like everything I get my hands on. And then I started going to seminars and seeking out gurus. And I studied with religious leaders and everybody that I could come up with. Right. And I started taking all these little pieces of things that I learned from all these different places and implementing and seeing, you know, what fit for me and what didn't, and trying it on and piecing it together. And then something funny started to happen while I was implementing this stuff. My life started changing very rapidly. And a lot of people thought I was nuts for everything that I was doing. Right. My marriage fell apart, and there were a lot of people who kind of left my life at the same time. But I did have someone show up. My little brother came to me one day and he said, hey, what are you doing again? And I said, well, I'm reading this and I'm studying this and I do this every day. And I said, why? And he said, well, you seem really happy and I've never seen you like this before. And I was wondering, if it worked for you, maybe it could work for me too. And I said, well, let's try it out. Right. So he starts doing some of these same things and his life started to change. And then I was kind of like, aha, maybe I can replicate this and I can show other people, because there's so many people out there struggling. I thought I was the only one struggling because I was always in my own head. But when I finally kind of cleared that space out, you see how many people are really hurting and having a hard time every day. And that's kind of when I made that shift to being the happiness coach, because I realized I could take this information, I could help other people, because where else do you learn this stuff if you don't have someone teaching it to you? It's not like you're going to school learning it there. My parents were not very happy people, so I certainly didn't learn it from them. I kind of learned the exact opposite. If you don't have that role model in front of you, where are you getting it? Right. And I think that's where people get caught up, is that happiness is supposed to be this thing we're just supposed to understand. Well, if you've never learned how to seek out your own happiness, then again, how do you expect to know how to do it? And so you need to give yourself a little bit of grace and let yourself off the hook a little bit until you take the time to go out and allow yourself to look for that happiness, to search for it. And you know what? It takes some time, and it takes a lot of courage, a lot of bravery, and it takes the ability to not listen to the people around you and just listen to your own heart. Those are all really hard things to do.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning your intimate stories and how you've come across this hack in a way, and you hacked yourself and you hacked the psychiatric ward because you wanted to live. You had that inner fire, inner desire, inner burst to live, and that made you go through forward. And good that you mentioned regarding parents, because we get the genes and we get the environment, the epigenetics, how the environment influences our life and our genes.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of research on the twins and everything, that they lived in different environments. So regarding parents and the consequence, because we mirror from our parents their subconsciousness, and we cannot be anything else unless we break the chain, we break the channel, we break this cord that's connecting us to our past, to our actually parents. They're the past. We need to live in the future. And people get confused here because there's so much, anyway, for the past 50 years and the last 20 years more with social media, it's so much present, this fake happy agenda and being like easy to do it. Like you mentioned, it is simple, but the road there, it's not meant to be easy. It empowers you. It forces, not forces, it grows you through the pain and through all the ordeal that you go through. Because I have it here, the happiness, this is my vision board.
I saw that. Yeah.
So I was on the landmark forum education, and they had this Necker cube. It's a cube that you can see, a cube that you can see either it's the back side in front or vice versa. So you can see both of the sides differently. Either you're on the unhappy or on the happy spectrum. And the unhappy spectrum, I think it's way harder to be at. Being unhappy, it's like it creates from a tiny ant, it creates a big elephant. The mind, the low emotions, the low vibration. It's people mentally and athletes, they commit suicides because even being winners and being Olympic and world champions, they do it because it's so overwhelming when you're on this side of the spectrum. Once you flip the coin, and to flip the coin, it's a process. It's ongoing thing. And a lot of athletes are just lost because they think, when I will achieve it, then I'll be happy. If
Right.
I do this, then it's always this chasing agenda of the hamster wheel. And athletes are a lot of times lonely and depressed, because if you do so much on one side, and everybody tells you, if you do this, then you'll be happy. If you do it like this, then you'll be successful, and then you'll be happy. But nobody really takes the time. Please bring us into the phase more profoundly, how you brought yourself into that profoundness of being happy, of the state of living, of understanding. It's not like this. You need to dwell in it, and you need to go deep.
Well, there's two problems with that. Number one, the people who have achieved happiness don't necessarily know how they got there. They just kind of fell into it. They've just found a way, right? And the other side of it is, the people who are maybe proclaiming to be happy aren't necessarily as happy as they let on. And the whole, chasing the happiness thing it's a hard cycle to get off of, right? Because you want to hold out hope. We're human beings. That's what we have. That's what we hold in our hearts. But the problem is anytime you're putting the happiness external to yourself on some event, on some material thing, on some relationship, anything that is external from you, it doesn't matter if you achieve it or not. The happiness isn't going to be there. That's why you see, everyone says, okay, well, graduate from college and you'll be happy, get a good job and you'll be happy, make this much money and you'll be happy, get married and you'll be happy, and have kids and you'll be happy, right? And so we just jump from milestone to milestone to milestone. And then we get to the end of this chain of milestones and we're like, oh, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be at all, right? And then you see all of these divorces and unhappy marriages, starting around the mid 30s, and people can't understand why it's happening, because I did everything the way I was supposed to do. I did everything right. Like, why is this happening to me? And it's because you just constantly putting it outside of yourself to another time, another place, another person. And it doesn't live there. It lives inside of you right now and right here. So if you can't be happy with who you are right here, right now, you're not going to be happy with anything in the future. I don't care what it is.
Is the source where you're coming from, or chasing that elusive happiness or any result.
Yeah, it's just a distraction at that point. That's all it is. Yeah.
Priorly, you also mentioned being determined. I had a moment like that as well. I was already training myself and others being happy all the time for several years, I think more than 3. But there was a time that in the last year of doing this, practicing this, my life fell apart completely. From losing my phone, not losing, I need to give it to someone because I was in debt. The guy just took it. From losing my car, from losing my precious bicycle, from losing, that's material. Then losing my fiance. My father passed away a couple of years ago. Also, my mother said, you're not my son, in a way-ish.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember that prior some years I read that one guy said, even if you are broken, you lose everything, you still have your underpants. Well, maybe I also didn't have my underpants because they were, so used already that I was like, okay, but what do I have? And I began to reflect. Right. I began to really go into the profound state, because as much as my surrounding, my environment, my inside also feeling was completely rubbish, was low.
Yeah.
I sort of had that small portion and part of me like, this is not real. This is like, it can be real, but I don't take it for real. And slowly I began to build the momentum that it happened on the 1st January 2014. I just woke up. I was already living at my mom's place back, with being over 30 years of age. And I woke up and I went on a walk and I said, you know what? Now I'm really going to decide, after several years of training, being happy every day. I decided I'm just going to be happy regardless of the inside, of the outside. I'm going to be not so blind spotting. I'm going to be aware and profounding, but I'm going to be happy no matter what. No more complaining, just happy every day. And of course, it's a up and down story and a process, but this made me step onto that new platform, onto that new level that I, as a professional athlete, priorly didn't manage, with all the results, with all the training, with all the effort, with all the doing. Finally, I sort of began to unhack it like you've did it. So please drive us into this. How can it be that as a person, and especially athletes, they are so far away from, because imagine if an athlete would give and deliver and invest so much time and energy and effort into understanding and not just playing one sport or being very efficient in one movement. Imagine where the world can be. Because
Sure.
is it so difficult? Because I think training hard I think it's more difficult than this is the anyway. Being happy is the difficultest training, the most heaviest. But I think all those weights and all that resistance. Please share us this. How can this coin be flipped? How can this Necker cube be flipped? That athletes begin to understand, I might do something like that. Let's try. What do they have to lose?
Yeah. Well, I think you take your strengths as an athlete and you use them in your favor, right? So when I was an athlete, right, I've always been somebody who likes to race the clock, right? I just like that feeling. So that plays big time into my life now, right? I am not somebody who wants to live with regret. And we're all racing the clock, right? I don't know when my last day is coming. None of us do. And I really can't sit with the feeling of knowing that if my last day were today or if it's coming tomorrow and I had to look at it, would I really be able to look back on my life and say, yeah, I did what I wanted to do. I came to do what I wanted to do. I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed my loved ones. I enjoyed time with myself. I tried things. I was brave and I went out and I did some cool stuff while I was here, right? Could I say that if I knew tomorrow was my last day? And if the answer is you can't say those things, then, maybe you need to change the way that you're going through your day to day. When we're in the midst of achieving and working and everything else, I think we forget that this is life. This is what we're living. And it's not like, someday you might slow down and then have the opportunity because number one, that opportunity may not come. Or number two, you may find yourself in a position like you did where things fall apart and suddenly you've got all this other stuff to worry about, right? We don't know what's coming tomorrow or a month from now. This in the moment to moment is where we live life, right? And enjoy it, even the hard stuff, like just appreciate it for what it is. And that will bring you a level of happiness like you've never really experienced because you are just connected to yourself and to everything else in the moment. It's a difficult place to get when you're used to kind of always jumping to the next thing, but it kind of goes along the lines of what we were just talking about, right? When you're putting everything ahead of you, right? It's a race you're never going to win. But if you could just sit here right now and say, you know what, right now I'm okay. Right now, there's nothing threatening me. I'm not in trouble, right? Unless there's an emergent situation coming at you right now. And then, you're just going to react anyway. But also as an athlete, you get really good at feeling, right? You have to think critically, sure, but when you're actually executing something, it becomes more of a feel. And that's how I like to liken happiness, right? I like to say it's kind of like, going and hitting a baseball, right? Because I can, as your coach, I can tell you how to stand. I can tell you how far apart to put your feet and where you should distribute your weight. And I can show you how to hold the bat. And I can show you where your elbows are supposed to be when you finish your swing and where you should be looking. I can tell you all of that stuff. Right. And I can adjust it when you practice. But until you swing that bat and make contact with that ball in a way that just, delivers the results you're looking for, until you get that feel down and you kind of, allow it to sort of permeate every cell in your body, you don't know what it's like to hit a baseball. And that's how you have to be with life and with happiness. You have to feel your way through it. Not think your way through it. You've got to feel your way through it. And that means you're going to make mistakes. You're going to hit a lot of balls before you hit a home run. Well, guess what? You're going to have a lot of feels and a lot of things that might seem uncomfortable until you hit on your happiness. So step out of that trying to think your way there and start feeling your way there.
Yes, but there's a thing about feeling. It's connected to blind spots. It's connected to powerlessness. It's connected to hate, all the things that fuel and come from our childhood, all the traumas, because we block. Because as a child, you don't want to feel. As an athlete, You cannot feel the defeat. You cannot feel being tired. You are not allowed. Even your parents as athletes have sometimes crazy parents. They are not allowed to feel and to just be. They are constructed and instructed to be robots. So it's good that you're mentioning this. This is the flipping coin that I think the humanity is in now, and also the sport world, from this achieving, and it doesn't matter what price, into this feeling, sensing, acknowledging, accepting, appreciating, just allowing and unburdening yourself and feeling through this. If you want to share.
Well, what you're talking about is processing the feelings, right? Which is something that we don't do. We have the feeling and then we either shut it down and suppress it, so we have to deal with it later on, or we attach a story to it and we start processing it in a really unhealthy way, right? Feeling is about feeling the emotion in the time that you're feeling it and processing it, kind of, figuring out, okay, this is where I am. I'm feeling this. I'm going to process this. I'm going to let it come through me, and then I'm going to move on. Right. So a real athlete feels defeat, because if you don't feel defeat, then you don't really know what winning feels like. Right. But you process that emotion and you realize, okay, it's not something I necessarily want to feel again. So I'm going to train harder so I don't have to go through this again. But if you can't feel anything, then you've shut down your superpower, right? The feeling is what makes us human. And I think you'll see that the feeling makes you a great athlete. The feeling makes you a great parent. The feeling makes you a great friend, a great communicator, a great whatever it is you want to be. It's the feeling part, right? The thinking is what gets us kind of tripped up, because there's a difference between, again, processing and then taking something and wrapping a story around it and letting other opinions interject and feed off of that and fuel it, right? Again, when you're processing in the moment, instead of, dealing with the past or the future, which is not where happiness lives, but when you're right here, allow yourself to have the feeling. It's going to be uncomfortable, just like training is uncomfortable in the moment, but you're better for it later on. And it just goes hand in hand. Be uncomfortable now so that you don't have to be uncomfortable later, because the discomfort later on is going to be 10 times worse than it'll be right now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, that innocent children are put in a discomfort in certain relationships that don't function, with parents that don't function. I'm not blaming anyone. We are all, a consequence of different environments and knowledge.
But now it's your responsibility, because you're an adult now.
The thing is that if you are, as a child, being conditioned to get love, or being conditioned to shut up because you didn't achieve, or in order to receive something, you need to, acknowledge some authority as a parent or as a coach. And then this powerlessness, as you mentioned, is suppressed, is imprinted somewhere in your body, and you don't want to feel it, because, of course, this is not a pleasant feeling to be. We live practically to feel good, but you don't feel good from the people that you depend on. And then you get adult and you change your mind, you get education, you get more evolved as your parents did, but yet still what happens? A lot of athletes, either they are successful in their sport, in their endeavors, in their business, in their relationships. The subconsciousness sometimes stays in the childhood.
Sure.
And it begins to disturb you. It begins to pop up it surges up in certain patterns, under certain conditions. And just before you win another game, you lose yourself, or you lose the momentum, you lose the focus. Why? Because subconsciousness is accustomed and adjusted to feeling bad, as it did in the childhood. So it wraps the mind around, and it's a crazy story once you begin to unravel it. And a lot of people just want to, have those big steps and change their life, because I had a big step and changed my life. I moved across the Atlantic Ocean from Europe to the Caribbean Ocean. You had a big step in changing your law practice, in changing yourself, going out of a relationship. But what we all did is small steps, daily small steps that come at the end to the big step that changes the life significantly. And this is where I see this new approach that I gained with the AEQ method that I could acknowledge and really understand the trigger points in the background, all the small bits and pieces of the structure and how to function in this way that it helps you, what we are all saying now, in creating those big steps. Please touch some of those big steps, how you mentioned that, because you didn't feel proudly, and then when you did them, you said, this is how it feels being free from this burden, from this relationship, from myself, yourself being unhappy, because you've created yourself into a happy person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the neuroscience behind it, right? I mean, we're just products of the software that we're running, right? Our brains like things that are familiar, which is why it keeps thinking the same thing. It takes less energy, right? And when you start going up against some of your belief system, then your brain starts panicking it. And because it's different territory and it's something that it has to really look at differently, you set yourself into a fight or flight mode. So you're actually having a biochemical reaction to trying to change your mindset, which is why it's so difficult. That's why changing habits are so hard. So that's why the repetition is so necessary, just like it is in training. You have to do these little things every single day to change those neural pathways, to make your brain more plastic, to mold it into the person that you want to be, literally, right, from the inside out. And so, yeah, it might look like huge steps, but it's all those little repetitive things that you had to do to get everything in place for you to be able to make that leap when the time was right. I don't think people realize how difficult this is, because for a number of reasons. Number one, when you're little, it seems easy to learn things, right? When you're young, it seems like it's easy because you're just sort of wide open and you accept things. And so then we get to adulthood and suddenly everything's so much harder. Well, it's because we've at that point, we've molded ourselves to a certain standpoint. When you're a child, you're kind of willing to look at things from so many different perspectives. You're open to that. But as an adult, you're not willing to sort of take yourself out of your box as much. And that's what's really limiting you, because you've put yourself in these parameters, right? And you're not willing to step outside of it. So when you really want to make a huge leap, if you're willing to kind of step outside of the box and look at yourself from the outside in and see, okay, well, what if I were to accept the exact opposite of what I believe, how would that change things for me? And just kind of looking at it from that perspective for a moment, you realize, okay, you're only kind of limited by what you're limiting yourself by, right? Or what you're allowing other people to limit you by their own opinion or whatever, right? Just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean it can't be done. You just haven't figured it out yet. So allow yourself that space to, and you're going to screw up and you're going to make mistakes, and maybe you're going to look silly and you're going to feel silly and you're going to fail, and things aren't going to be clean and neat the way that you want them to be. But that's the learning process. That's how you learned as a child. You just don't remember that part, right? So when I coach people through this happiness thing, I say you've got to give yourself that time, that grace period, to be able to do the trial and error work, to play around a little bit, to be a little bit messy, like the child who's, painting and creating and all of those things. You've got to allow that sort of childlike spirit to come back out again, and not judge yourself for it, because that's where you learn about yourself and about how you react to things and about how you're feeling about things.
Yes, that's where I was going now into, because as a child, we get the upraising, we get the knowledge, we get the instructions, and we begin to put our mind and our body into order. Now, the thing what happens that they don't teach us, that it's coming out now with all the neuroscience and the epigenetics, is that, yes, once again, we need to learn all the time. We need to always upgrade our subconsciousness, because as I mentioned prior, and you did as well, it's our mind, our subconsciousness is in order. So when you begin to change, the subconsciousness inside of us says, hey, stop. What you're doing now is making me in this order. So I don't want this. So our thoughts, our inner dialogue, our whole body is resisting this change and these leaps. Although we know we need them, we want them, we are hungry for those big leaps and changes, but everything inside of us is against it, because it's an old order. We always need to go into the new order and create and learn. And this is what happens when we have in our adult life additional or consequently changes that happen on our body. Because first we are creative, then first we are, it's vice versa now. The last thing is that we are creative and we have emotional relationships. And the first thing, the bottom of the pyramid, is our health. So when our health gets in disorder or consequently has consequences of disorder, either it's disease, either it's injuries, either it's trauma, either it's accident, it can all be explained this way. And then that's the time when we wake up. We are actually so, in a way, so low conscious human beings in 2022 that we need bad things to happen to our body in order to change. Either it's nutrition, either it's behavior, either it's reading books differently or different podcasts or something. And we are, can you please emphasize on this? Why do we allow it that it falls so down that when we get injured or when something physically happens, that we begin to reflect more, journal more, think differently, have that grace period and allow us the time that we need to change?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one thing that I've learned through all of this is that we as human beings really aren't that smart. We like to give ourselves a lot of credit.
Like Einstein said, right? Einstein said that I think that universe and the human stupidity is limitless. Like,
yeah, I mean, we really get it wrong a lot of the time, and we don't seem to learn very quickly from the fact that we're doing things incorrectly, right? That stuff that's not serving us. We love to take those square pegs and try to get them in the round holes, right? And I was definitely a product of that way of thinking. I think it really, when you're able to admit to yourself that you're probably not as amazing of a human being as you want to think you are sometimes, and that but at the same time not degrading yourself for it, just accepting that you're human and that learning is why you're here. This is exactly why you're here. The test never ends, right? We're always, like you said, we should always be upgrading. So I think, why it comes down to the health is because as you said, if you don't have that, then what do you have? When your health is affected, then everything in your life is affected. It's not something that you can just kind of put off to the side. I know you've had really horrible injuries. I've had my fair share of injuries, to the point where I was, I couldn't do anything but lay around for months upon months. And when you have that time and space and you can't really do anything else, then it forces you to go inside and really take a good hard look at things. And then, it is a little bit easier to admit, maybe I could do this a little bit better. Maybe I could be a little bit better in this area. Maybe I've been making excuses because of this. And then realizing, but that's all okay because I'm going to learn from it now. Right. And I think once you kind of accept from that standpoint is when you begin to heal physically as well. Right. So it's almost like the healing physically coincides with the emotional healing and the spiritual healing kind of all at the same time. It's the physical healing is sort of the catalyst for the rest of it.
Yeah, what I've come to acknowledge now with all the new insights that I get from the AQ and myself and reflecting more on the past is that if you lose something in creative, financial world, you still have emotions and relationships. But if you lose here, then you're down to the rock bottom and it's hell. And we need pain because we don't listen to our body. We practically neglect what our body is sending the signals. It's supposed to be 80% body up and brain 20 down, the processor, but it's vice versa in this world. And a lot of people achieve a lot of things, but on what price? The price of many athletes is more than health. It's life sometimes, literally life. And also the, business world as well, people that are in the business world. So in that way, chronic pain that is on the financial level, a lot of people has chronic pain, daily chronic pain on financial level, that of course penetrates into their relationships because you can go on a dinner, but if you can't pay a dinner to a lady, then it's not as pretty, or the different sides to it.
Sure.
And when that doesn't work, or you cannot pay your bills and support your family, and chronically the chronic pain penetrates into your relationships, then of course body will begin to shout. And all these injuries, you've had your spine injury, I had my hip injury, chronic pain that I couldn't sleep. And if I move just a bit as I wanted, as I was 10 years or 15 years ago able, and then all of a sudden, no, your body says, no,
Yeah.
I'm the winner. I'm the reality.
Yeah.
I am the reality. The body
Right.
is the reality, not the mind that can wander, in past,
Sure.
in future, and philosophy and fantasies, but respecting the body, being, as you mentioned, time, space, gravity, energy, respecting it, acknowledging it. So this is something that's very crucial, I think, with chronic pain. Please expand a bit your point of view on this chronic pain that you had and how you dealt with it with your approach, with your happy being kind of a state.
Yeah, I think everything kind of comes in stages of awareness, right? Because I had done a lot of the work before I got hurt, and I think that helped me through the surgery. But my rehab was not going well, and I was getting frustrated a lot of the time because I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing from a mental aspect as well. But I was also pushing again still, right? I'm here, I am in chronic pain every single day, and I'm still pushing as a mom, as an entrepreneur, still even trying to get the gains that I could physically, the little increments that I could grab. I was still forcing myself through all of that. And then all of a sudden the pain was gone. And I woke up one morning and I was like, wow, now looking back, I see, how I was even neglecting myself then. How mean I was being to myself, right? The things that I was saying to myself, you're not strong enough. If you were stronger, this wouldn't be happening. You would be further along. And it has nothing to do with strength or tenacity, because I am a pretty tough person and pretty resilient. But I was asking for things of myself without giving anything to myself. Does that make sense? And so I wasn't giving my body what it needed, and I wasn't giving my heart what it needed, and I wasn't giving my spirit what it needed. I was trying to, and I was doing a lot better than I had in the past, but there were still things that I was neglecting because I didn't necessarily either want to go there, or it was just not the right time for me to go there. And then when this next level of awareness comes about, however it comes, because it's different for all of us, then you see, again, you have to do that admission of, okay, maybe I'm not as great of a human being as I thought I was, but that's okay, because I'm learning, and now I'm on to the next phase, and I'm going to learn again. And the universe has a way of humbling you over and over again. And it's all good stuff. It really is, because it's not a judgment on you as a human being. It is part of your human journey. It is part of why you are here.
Yeah, that hero journey that
Yes.
you go and then you fall, and
Yes.
then you go from the pitfall up again and you learn. And it's a spiral. It's not this, it's a spiral. We go
right
up. And you mentioned something now regarding this healing and really acknowledging. So how funny it is that you knew you wanted to leave the relationship, and you heard the signs, you saw the red signals, you saw something in the relationship, but yet you didn't muster the courage or the effort or the energy or the power to just step out of the house or move away and go out of the relationship. And so many athletes are, still in the relationship with their parents or with coaches or with some technique they don't want to change, or they don't want to mingle now or disturb now. But yet again, there comes a time, there comes a phase that you need to do all of that you were so afraid of, that you know everything that you need to do, but yet you didn't. And then the realization, the conclusion, the reality just slaps you in the face and tells you, there you go. You could have done it 2 years ago, but you needed 2 years more of suffering to get it. Okay, so slow you are. This is what I also asked myself, like practically last week. I said, Jure, what would your life be if you would do everything correctly, as I understand now that it's correct? Because I'm not doing. Sometimes I wake up like this. Sometimes I forget some ritual. Sometimes I eat this. Sometimes I do that. We are all humans. We all have temptations. But you would imagine, what would your life be like if you would really behave, react, respond, do? Because I know a lot consciously, but subconsciously, it's still bugging me. So I just said, okay, I decided to do everything correctly now. And life is changing. I'm talking with Dannie De Novo. I'm doing different things among some consequences and of course aspects of new things that happened in my life. But yeah, try to expand this as well, please, regarding that moment when you realize, oh, I knew this 2 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah. You know what I call it? I call it getting over yourself, right? It's just kind of letting the ego fall to the side and just allowing yourself to be, honestly, it wasn't that long ago. And I'm not exaggerating here, where I couldn't even look at myself in the eye in the mirror. I had such low self-esteem and self-worth that I couldn't even hold eye contact with myself in the mirror. And now I'm on TV all the time. And to get from that place to where I am now took a lot, right? But I just needed to get over myself. I thought something about myself that wasn't true, and I was standing in the way of my success and my own happiness. But it required changing my perspective, because when I was at home in my bathroom and I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror, my message wasn't getting out to anybody. I couldn't help anybody. Right. But now I go on TV and back in the day, my ego would have said, oh, what do you need to be on TV for? Like, what you think you need so important and all that stuff. Well, guess what? I go on TV and people know who I am and they hear my message and then they contact me for help. And that's how I get to help people and help more and more people, because now they know where I am and how to get in touch with me. When I'm in my bathroom, they don't know where I am. They don't care, right? They're worried about their own stuff. But what they turn on the television, they see me. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, maybe she's got something that could help me, just like I helped my little brother. Right. And so, yeah, I had to get over myself to be able to help myself and then to be able to help other people.
Yes, that ego BS is so complicated. It's so huge. But then once you step out and you cut away that BS,
yeah,
you become more mature, emotionally, responsibly mature. You understand, and I finally see now. Sometimes I was in awe of people. How could they do that? And now I'm like, I think I know now how could they achieve something with their right. Nice aura and that calm feeling that I always am like amazed by, and I'm like yearning for it and working for it. And now I'm getting there as well, and being that maturity, responsibly wise, above my ego BS and all the stuff, and understanding that my chronic pain is my savior and can be savior for other people. I can understand that I need to study it. It's not black and white. Nothing is. We have a lot of races, not just black and white. We have Caucasian, we have the Caribbean, we have the Latin, we have the Asian, we have the Philippines and the Oceanic, and we have so many different colors and rainbows of life and emotions. Understanding all these emotions. Maybe just to conclude and have certain steps that I mentioned now regarding responsibility, regarding cutting away some things, studying some things. What might you add to some of the conclusion steps that listeners can get away from?
I would start simple, right? I would change a little bit at a time, just like you would if you were shifting the way you were working out or your performance schedule, right? So I say do the 5-4-3 method. So 5 minutes of faking a smile. I call it the 5-minute smile. You set a timer on your phone and you force yourself to smile for that entire 5 minutes, even if you don't feel like it, even if you feel like you're lying to yourself. And that physical nature of smiling starts that cascade of neurotransmitters and the mood enhancing chemicals, which just set off more of a cascade throughout your body. And if you look at yourself in the mirror while you do it, you get more benefit. And if you go out in a public and you interact with other people and they smile back at you, you get even more benefit. So it kind of carries itself throughout the day. But the whole idea is, about changing your attitude about it too, right? Does it feel like I'm faking it? Okay, maybe when I start, but by the end, I'm probably not faking it anymore. And I'm choosing to do this. I'm going to change my attitude. I'm going to change the way I interact with people, right? make it a conscious decision. And then I do 4 minutes of meditation. I mean, I actually do a lot more than 4 minutes of meditation now, but start with 4 minutes of meditation, because you got all this chatter going on in your head all day long. Most of it doesn't even belong to you. How do you know what voice to listen to? Well, you've got to redirect the focus from all of that to the one true voice, which I believe emanates from your heart. That voice will tell you everything you need to know about being happy, but you've got to hear it and you've got to trust it. So redirect the focus, and you can do a very simple meditation simply by lighting a candle and focusing on the flame and just allowing, again, that focus to redirect to something else. And you'll hear your heart. Just pay attention. And then I do 3 minutes of mirror work. So I go into the mirror, and the one that I couldn't look at myself in before. And I'll pick something that's counterintuitive or counter to what I believe about myself. So if I believe I'm not a very strong or brave individual, I'd say, Dannie De Novo, you are the bravest, strongest woman I have ever known. And I'll just repeat that mantra for 90 seconds looking into my right eye. And then I'll repeat it for another 90 seconds looking into my left eye. And that's, again, going to feel like you're lying to yourself. It's not something that is going to change in a day or two or in a week or two. It's probably going to take a couple months, maybe 3 or 4 months, until you cross over that, oh, this doesn't really feel like I'm lying anymore. It kind of feels like the truth. But you've got to do it every day until you get over that hump. It's like swinging the bat every day until you make contact with that home run ball, right? You've just got to keep swinging until you feel it. And then once you feel it, you try to replicate it, right? You've got to keep going. That's the name of the game. You've got to be persistent.
Great that you reminded me. I also, when I had that moment in 2012 and 13 of really digging deep and hitting the rock bottom, I was like, I created this shit in my life.
Yeah.
I can create something else, because 2 years ago, I didn't have this feeling, this situation, this environment, low results or none. So I created them with some attitude.
Yeah.
What if I change my attitude?
Exactly.
Because I faked it 2 years ago, the fear, the worries, when I had money, when I had everything, and then it hit down. Oh, so if I hit this and I manifested it, I can manifest something else. So it's good that you mentioned this, and that you, of course, got to the same, we all get into these patterns and into these channels that help us and support us and really then help us to grow. So regarding, I want to mention also this aha moment, or not aha, maybe more the like this moment that you are connected with your own. Oh, I get it now. You can also fake this, that you get something, because
right.
I had a lot of clients, they were like, I understand you, but I don't get it. I don't get it. Well, I said, if you repeat that you don't get it, you will never get it. So start repeating that you get it, and you might get it.
Yeah.
Because who understands is happy, or who's happy understands eventually. So you need to do at least something of it. And good that you did this 5-4-3 method and approach that you have. And I want to also add the like the feeling, the sign and all of this, because it's like when I have some pain or when I have some issue, I just do, just some noise, some sound that penetrates my body, and I begin to feel, I begin to reconnect. I get in the present moment.
Right.
And there's another solution that I found. It's the brainwave entrainment by Maurice Zelkovich. I also had a podcast with him. Sounds that are like fitness, like a gym for your brain. That brain begins to chemically rewire, because we are wired. We weren't like this when we were born, or before the situation, or before the parents, or before the relationship, and then we manifested, so we can manifest something else now.
Yeah. There's a lot of people out there saying stuff, and generally speaking, a lot of the information is the same. It just sounds different coming from different people, right? So what I tell people is, if you're not getting it, keep digging, keep going to other places, because sooner or later someone's going to say it in a way that clicks for you, and you're going to be able to take that and utilize it. Just because what I'm saying here doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean that someone else saying it a different way won't. So you've got to keep going. You've got to keep learning. You've got to keep hearing it different ways, and you've got to hear it over and over again. And then there will be that aha moment where it's like, oh, that's it. I get it. I've been trying to force this, but it's really just like this. And then all of a sudden it makes sense. And then you can kind of go on to the next thing.
And then the next level comes.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
It's not like the last destination.
No,
moment.
you're never going to get
the
there.
Next is the next is the next.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's, like I said, there are a lot of people out there who are helping, and everyone's just kind of saying it their own way. So find the way that works for you and implement that way. It doesn't have to be from any one given person. Use what works for you.
Dannie, thank you very much. I think that we can wrap it up, and that listeners, viewers got enough. Please re-listen it, subscribe, share, and then really acknowledge and live it, dance it, feel it, like we said today, and over, go into more profound state. Thank you very much, Dannie.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Follow me on Being the Genuine Athlete Instagram and Facebook page. Share, like, and comment, and be genuine all the way. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Good.